I'm not saying that having a coaching staff and coaches who share information with people who cover the team is the right way to go. I'm not saying that that is a necessity, but I think the lack of any sort of messaging coming out anywhere saying, "Oh, we're in good shape here," or these are the guys you need to follow, and there are certain people who will then start tweeting about them a lot, and make it obvious that Louisville is interested in them, and that's fine. That's the recruiting ecosystem and how it's built. The fact that there's none of that, the fact that um, nobody is crowing about Louisville being in good shape with certain people is concerning. And I've been talking about it since it started. In order for people to subscribe to the "we got this" attitude, the kind of the Department of Defense secrecy stuff, and real G's move in silence like lasagna, all that stuff, like you got to show people something, and you can't move in silence and expect people to think things are going well behind the scenes if you're 2-17. Like there's no reason to think that anything
Right.
is going well if you're 2-17.
And
So
when you already struck out in the class of 2023
yes,
high
yeah,
school kids. Yeah.
right, right. So this is a humongously difficult situation. Nobody wants to pull the plug after one season. Nobody does. That you just it just this is a very different thing, I think, than the NFL, than the NBA, than professional leagues. This is a different deal, and when you throw in the relationship that the coach, in this case Kenny Payne, has with the university, and I don't think Josh Hurd wants to operate that way either. I think he wants to. He again, this is a guy who is molded by his experiences at Villanova and the dedication to Jay Wright and sticking with Jay Wright and watching things slowly burn into what became Final Fours and eventually national championships and all of that stuff. But for a guy who was molded and shaped by those experiences, and for everything, I mean, sticking his neck out on a hire like this, when there are a lot of bona fide college basketball coaches who have wins to show for and NCAA tournaments to show for, who were interested in this job, and to stick your neck out on behalf of a lot of the alumni and people who said they would be marching in with NIL and all of that other stuff, and really do whatever it took to help Kenny Payne be successful. You know, that's a big risk for someone who was an interim when they made the hire and is early in his stages as a head coach. This is a very perilous 2 months for everybody associated with this program.
Let me say this though on Josh Hurd too. If he were to hire someone else, and we've gone into the details of, who Louisville could have hired and all that stuff and what the search firm recommended and all those types of things, and where Louisville was in a financial state at this point last year.
Mm-hmm.
But if he hired someone who was a mid-major coach or someone like that, or heck, even if he would have hired someone like Jerome Tang, who's absolutely killing it at Kansas State right now.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, what would the backlash have been if he hired someone
significant?
Like that? Yeah,
significant. But that's an assistant, Jack. That's different.
Yeah,
If you
but
go hire,
I'm not even just saying Jerome Tim. I'm saying, what if he hired like a Matt McMahon? Like, I don't think people would have been jumping out of wheelbarrows for Matt McMahon.
No, I think people would have been pretty. There would have been a mixed reaction.
I think people would have been pissed off.
Yeah,
and I think
there's enough,
coach, and I think he's doing a good job. Obviously at LSU, they've had kind of a rough patch in the SEC because the SEC is good this year. It's still year one, all that stuff, but they've at least racked up wins. Yeah. But for me, I think if you were to hire anyone other than Kenny Payne, unless you went out and got an absolute home run hire, that you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, someone like, a Nate Oates, a Musselman, a, Mick Cronin, a home
Even
run
Mick Cronin, I think people would have been pissed off.
Yeah, but I mean,
I think
like,
there's like three guys that people were actually excited about whose names were thrown out by people like us.
like Bruce Pearl type. I remember when that was
Pearl,
the thing for a minute.
Musselman, Oates, and even Oates. I don't know, but Pearl, Musselman,
I love Oates, and obviously I think Oates, Scott Drew, but I think
sorry,
I think Oates has the best team in the country right now, and it's really easy for me to say that I really like it right now, but I really liked it back then. Also, I was calling for that back in the day. But if you weren't going to get someone like that, which Louisville couldn't afford to get at that point, because
they would have had to come up
else,
with $12 million plus salary. That's a lot of money.
It didn't matter who you were going to hire. There was going to be an absolute massive backlash of people. It didn't matter if that guy was a mid-major coach, a high-major coach, if he was white, if he was
Kenny
black.
Payne was the popular. Kenny Payne was the popular choice.
Yeah, and you hired the dude that the fans wanted, and I don't think Josh Hurd had much of a choice.
Nope.
To where you're kind of in a situation now to where I don't think you have a choice considering what Louisville's been through. And you brought up, this isn't the NFL. This isn't the NBA. You can't just keep cycling through coaches. You want to know how you end up being, 2-17 every year? Hiring a new damn coach every year. That's how that happens.
Yeah.
That's how you become, I know Louisville people like to pick on DePaul. They just had a big win over a top 10 Xavier team.
Hey.
That's how you become DePaul. That's how you become Vanderbilt. That's how you become, until this year, Pittsburgh.
But Jack,
I know you didn't like that, but when you
that was unfair.
I know. I
wouldn't throw them in that category.
I know. I mainly did that just to annoy you, but but that's how you become the bottom of the barrel type programs. That's always changing something. That's always changing the head coach. When you're in college, you need a coach there to establish a system and establish recruits and stuff like that. The issue is, you're not establishing anything when you're 2-17 and you don't have any recruits coming in.
Well, and what's the system? There is no system. There is no system.
So
whatever the system is, it shouldn't be the system, because if there is a system, it doesn't work. So not even remotely.
If you're Josh Hurd in Louisville, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place of one, all the people that wanted Kenny Payne to come. Two, the fact
a lot of powerful people with a lot of money who wanted Kenny Payne to come.
Yeah, but also the fact that he's just not producing right now. There's time to change that, and the transfer portal is that big, massive opportunity for him to change that. But he's not producing at any level right now, and you have the fact that you can't really move on because of the powerful people that we just mentioned, and also the fact that would be 3 coaches in 3 years. And 4 coaches since you fired Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
In 2017, like that's not sustainable. That's not how you fix a program in college basketball. This isn't the NFL where you can just cycle through coaches and plug and play and do that. This isn't professional sports. There's a difference between college sports and professional sports where the coach is so important and runs the show, runs all the personnel.
Yeah.
They're
the president of the program. Yeah. It's everything.
You need to have consistency there. And you had the NCAA IRP stuff that I do think hampered Kenny Payne in the portal last offseason.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that excuse this time around.
No.
Or if you whiff this time, year 2, I think it becomes a different story. And if
I think you give him year 2 and that's it. I think that's it.
What would he need to do year 2 for you? To prove that he's worth.
Well, here again, I'm not an AD. I have so much respect for Josh Hurd, and I like Kenny Payne. I think he's a great guy. I really do. Yeah. And I know people kind of make fun of media guys when they say that. I'm not trying to pick on Kenny Payne, but
the team's 2-17. We got to tell how.
But the team's 2-17. He seems like he's in way over his head from an actual strategic scheming, in-game adaptability, preparation, all of that stuff standpoint. And this seems like the staff is too, which is, a real problem. So my thought is you say this year is beyond unacceptable to the point that if I didn't have so much respect for you in this situation, I would be strongly considering a coaching change. But because of what you mean to this university And because of how much respect I have for the career that you have had to this point, I think it'd be silly for any of us to sit down and talk about how we're going to split apart. Instead, we need to come up with a much more hands-on strategy. None of this aloof stuff, move in silence. You've got to be absolutely on top of your shit. And your staff needs to change because clearly no one is getting these players prepared for games well enough. They're trying clearly, but they're not doing very well. So the staff needs to change immediately, I think. And two, you need to go sit down in front of the camera and media and say, this is my plan. Because right now the plan is always about, you have to understand what this program means to the community. You have to understand. I need these guys to understand. I need you to understand all this stuff. Great. That was the message when you got hired and maybe into the summer. What is your basketball plan? What is your basketball plan? How are you getting better every day? How are you preparing for games differently next year? And what are you going to do in the recruiting portal that makes me believe that not only you're going to go get good players, but you have the chops and the staff to take good players and win games? Look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a bunch of good players. Louisville has a bunch of guys who are top 100 kids. So don't come at me and say we don't have talent.
It's not that they don't have talent. It's that it's not in a.
The roster was poorly constructed.
Yeah, it's terribly constructed.
Absolutely. No question. But how are you going to construct it better? And then how are you going to coach it? You had a whole offseason to work on a strategy of saying, look, this roster is not what we want it to be. And we're going into the year feeling like maybe our one hand is behind our back. Throw me a 1-3-1. Throw me a confusing press. Throw me something where you are just like taking the air out of the ball and posting your 19 big guys up constantly. Show me something that suggests that, yes, you know you have a weakness, but I'm going to find a way to coach around it and find strengths. Because right now it's like being on NCAA college hoops and saying, this is whatever I think my system is. Again, I've said this repeatedly. I don't know what their system is. They call plays from the sideline. It doesn't look like it's a play. It's just kind of people looking confused. And show us what that looks like. Because I don't believe that you get good players. I don't believe that that's going to change a whole lot. Because I still think the coaching is the problem.